All right, we are live. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Google Advanced Livestream sessions, where today's episode will focus on smart creatives. My name is Sveva. I'm an account manager here at Google in our Dublin office, working for the Dutch market. And with me here today is Christian, who is a search specialist. I'll be your host of today's session, and Christian is going to take you to the content. Christian, how are you doing, man? Did you have a good start of your week?
I have, yeah. It's Tuesday. It's been a lot better now. I'm here with you, and you guys. So thank you for having me.
Great, that's great to hear. So maybe before we get started, can you briefly tell us what your role is?
Of course, yeah. I work as a search specialist here in our headquarters in Dublin for Google, where I work primarily with the Northern Europe market. I also focus specifically on the ads part of the business, and my baby is smart creative, so responsive search ads and dynamic search ads, which I'm kind of leading across the region. So that's also why I've been invited here to talk to you guys. And yeah, again, thank you for having me. I'm really excited about the topic. So hope you learned something.
Perfect. All right. Just before we get started, a couple points from my side. So this is the second out of 7 episodes that we're hosting over a period of 14 weeks. The purpose of these series is to go in depth into the latest of our Google Ads products. We're going to cover products across the whole marketing funnel. And today is going to be focused on smart creatives. Now, the right guy to talk to when it comes to smart creatives is Christian, who's here with us today. And the good thing is that you're able to ask some questions later on today as well, because we want to make this live stream as interactive as a live stream can possibly be. So we've set aside 30 minutes for Christian to walk you through the content, and then 20 minutes of Q&A with questions from you in the audience. Now, if you have already submitted your questions via the form that we sent out earlier, that's perfect. If you did not have the chance yet, feel free to do so using the chat functionality in the YouTube interface on this side of the screen. Please do keep in mind that your name and question will be visible when you post a question. So please refrain from asking any sensitive questions about your business. If you want to do so, please reach out to your Google contact after the session. Now, we have a lot to cover in today's session in a short time, so we'll make sure to send out the slides afterwards to you as well. If you're not watching this live, please know that the Q&A part will not be in the recording of today. So this was all the practical information from my side, actually, which means that I can hand it over to Christian to take you through the content of today, Smart Creatives.
Thank you, Sebo. All right, so smart creatives. How can we use automation to scale up your creatives and make sure you get the best of your marketing efforts with our new products? So before we dive into today's topic about responsive search ads and dynamic search ads, which are the two current smart creative products that we have, it might be interesting to give a bit of context of why we've developed these formats. Now, as I'm sure you all know, there's a lot of searches on Google every day. Actually, we have 3.5 billion searches every single day. Now, it's a lot of searches, and we want to make sure that we respond to each of those searches with the highest quality responses, both organically and also paid. So we do this by trying to maximize the relevance of each ad to the specific query or user. And there are multiple ways that we try to do this, but 2 very important factors are we targeting optimally? And 2, is the message optimal? Now, in the past, optimizing both of these elements have been a very manual process, yet a lot of people have actually become really good at it. And it's a cool job. It's something that a lot of people spend a lot of time on, and it's still it's an art. But with the evolution of our ecosystem in the ads, with new devices, locations, and other signals becoming more and more prominent, it is becoming harder and harder to do this manually. So this is why we've built a solution that takes into consideration all of these signals and the complexity and tries to automate it for you while still giving you the control over your messaging and your targeting. So this is really the big question. How can you serve highly relevant ads to each search query with little effort? Now, again, before we move forward to answer this question, there's a bit of creative housekeeping, because there are certain rules that are applied for any type of creative setup that you use. So these 3 elements are really the basics of good creatives. Having opted in optimized ad rotation, added 3 or more extensions and 3 or more ads to each ad group is really the first thing that should be done before starting to test or evaluate new strategies. We see that ad groups that qualify for all of these 3 pillars see an average of 5 to 15% uplift in clicks. So that's really huge. So before starting to play around with new strategies, DSA, responsive search ads, and so on, I'd really recommend you to go through your AdWords account and check if all of your ad groups follow these guidelines. So a good thing is that adding a responsive search ads will count towards the amount of ads and actually creates a synergetic effect. But we can talk more about that later. So let's dive into it. Cool. Now, I know that this is supposed to be an advanced session. However, I'd like to quickly recap what a responsive search ad is. So a responsive search ad lets you add multiple descriptions and multiple headlines into an ad, and then lets it automatically create the most relevant combination for each query. Over time, it then learns what combination works the best based on the specific signals that it's received. So in a responsive search ad, you can add up to 15 headlines and 4 descriptions. You can create responsive search ads through our own interface, but you can also do it through most of the third-party providers, such as SA360 and the other big ones. Cool. All right. So now that we know what a responsive search ad is, let's try to look at how to measure its impact, because this is really, really important. How do we measure whether the responsive search ads is driving incremental conversions or clicks or whatever your business objective is, and how do we measure it in a proper way? Now, to fully understand how to evaluate the performance of a responsive search ad, it's important to have an understanding, just a basic understanding of how the auction works. So there are different elements that go into the ad auction. We have expected click-through rate, ad relevance, landing page experience, ad quality, bid, expected impact of ad extension formats, and then finally that calculates a sort of ad rank. And then the one with the ad with the highest ad rank will then win the specific auction. So in these different pillars, they kind of go hand in hand with different parts of our system. So some of them are really related to the query. For example, the expected click-through rate. So the expected click-through rate is really tied to the specific query. Some queries just have a lower expected click-through rate due to its lower, for example, intent base. If you move towards the middle of the little graph here, you see the ad quality. The ad quality is also slightly tied to the query, everything tied together, but it's more towards what's the quality of the specific ad? Are you really highlighting the USPs of your specific ad? Is it well written? Do we have enough diversity in the ad group to serve the specific ad for the specific query? So it's really important to understand these two pillars. Some of them are related to the query, and some of them are related to the ad. All right, so knowing this is going into this. This is kind of like the conclusion is like not judge an ad by its click-through rate. So I know that there's been many metrics in the past that's been crucial to evaluate the performance, and one of them has been click-through rate. Now it makes sense. Logically, it makes sense that the ad with the highest click-through rate should be continued, while all others should be stopped. But this logic only applies if the only variable is the ad and not the query in mention. If multiple expanded text ads, or ETAs, as I will say from now on, target the same query with the one with the highest click-through rate is likely to win and be better. However, when we add the layer of the query and smart targeting, there are suddenly 2 variables, the ad and the query. So some queries might just on average have a lower click-through rate no matter what ad is trying to target that specific query. So it will actually look like that those queries are underperforming compared to the other ones. So it's really hard to then deduct whether is it the ad or is it the specific query that is underperforming or has the lowest click-through rate. So this is one of the reasons why we should start to look at the proxy metrics such as click-through rate and look at whether each ad contributes to the overall success of the ad group. So if an RSA is running side by side with an ETA and is driving incremental clicks or conversion at a price that is profitable for your specific business, it is increasing the overall performance of your efforts. So turning off that responsive search ad because it looks more expensive than your ETAs will likely decrease or increase your average CTR or decrease the average cost, but it will be at the expense of incrementality or volume. When we look at a successful marketing strategy, profitable growth is often the key factor to success. So the 2 questions are really, 1, can we gain market share? And 2, can we make money while doing it? So any ad group or any ad should really be evaluated based on whether they contribute to that specific KPI, and not whether it has a high or a low click-through rate. So that's really a very important part. Cool. Now we know how to evaluate the results of a responsive search ad. We need to understand how we can test it out. And when you test out basically anything in Google AdWords, it's really important that you set yourself up for success to get non-contaminated results. There are two important things to remember when we talk about responsive search ads in relation to this. So the first one is, one, add an RSA to all the ad groups that are being experimented in the campaign, and two, pause all the ad groups where the RSAs are not being tested. So this is when you set up a draft and experiment, it's very important that we do a clean cut with one variable to get you a clean result when testing out responsive search ads and not responsive search ads. So here is a specific example of a test that is not set up for success. So two of the three ad groups in the campaign do not have the variable that we're testing, the responsive search ad, and are active while the test is running. Hence, it's really difficult to assess whether it's a meaningful difference in the campaign performance. So again, when you test out responsive search ads, it's really important to have in the ad group, all the ad groups in the campaign that you're testing out to have responsive search ads on the side with ETAs, and in the campaign that is the kind of the holdout group to have no RSAs at all. All right. Now, how do we actually test it? And again, this might look a bit messy, but you will get the slides afterwards, and I'll try to walk you through it just to make sure that we get through the whole thing. So look at this a bit like a graph, where the x-axis is the time and the y-axis represents the two campaigns that are being tested. Now, on top, we have the regular campaign with no responsive search ad, and on the bottom, we have the test campaign that includes the responsive search ads. Now, to get proper results, we need to give the system enough time to calibrate, learn, and evaluate the performance. So what we recommend is a 50-50 traffic split, 1 week of calibration, 1 week of learning, and then 1 to 2 conversion cycles. A conversion cycle is the average time between a click to a conversion. So if you don't know the specific of your conversion cycle, a good rule of thumb is to let it run for roughly 3 weeks and then see if we've got enough data to see significant results. Cool. So we've integrated some really useful tools in the AdWords account to make it easier for you to understand the performance of your responsive search ads. So under ads and extensions, you can add a custom column called ad strength, which will show you a score from below average to good for each of your responsive search ads. This score is based on the quality and diversity of the headlines and descriptions that you've added to the ad. If there are too many repetitive lines, we'll not be able to serve combinations that are distinct enough to be relevant for a wide range of queries. When you're creating your responsive search ads, you will see a live evaluation of the ad strength and recommendations on what to change. A really good idea is to include multiple unique selling points, such as price, availability, location, and so on. There is a Help Center article that goes through the best practices of this, and it's just to read through and then try out different combinations to see if you can pump up your ad strength. All right. You can also access the asset detail report under the ads and extension. And here you will see two different tabs. You will see a breakdown of the assets and the combinations. In the assets tab, you can see which headlines and which descriptions are getting the most impressions, and then replace the ones that aren't getting any traction with something new. And in the combination report, you can actually see the actual combinations and the percentage of impressions that they have delivered. So those are two really good tools to understand the performance. So are we set up for success? Do we have the correct ad strength? And also which combinations, which headlines, and which descriptions are actually driving most of the impressions? All right. So that was an introduction, how to measure, how to test, and some best practices on how you can evaluate the performance of responsive search ads. That's the first Smart Creative product that we have. Now this is the second one, and this is actually one of my absolute favorite products. It's an older product, but it's recently gotten a lot of traction from our engineers, and it's one of the coolest products I think I've ever seen. All right, so dynamic search ads. So before we really dive into what they are and how we can set them up, how we optimize, first of all, I'd like to talk about the challenge that we're trying to solve for here. So it's really keyword coverage. Keyword coverage is becoming increasingly challenging for all advertisers. So actually 15% of all queries every day on Google are new searches that's never been seen before. Another challenge is that some websites, especially e-commerce, travel, and so on, have huge websites, and they're really hard to manage. When product inventory is changing often, the jobs of an account manager or a developer is becoming almost impossible to keep up. And we also know something new on the scene. Voice search is really bringing in a new type of search queries. So this means that even a very well-managed campaign could easily miss valuable traffic. And these are some of the challenges that dynamic search ads are trying to solve for. Cool. So dynamic search ads, or DSA, as I can refer from now on, helps you really grow your relevant keyword coverage. So how does it work? Using our organic web crawling technology, DSA indexes your website to determine for which searches to show your ads. If a search query is relevant to the content on your website, we will automatically customize your ad's headline and find the most relevant landing page based on your products and services. And this has many benefits, actually 4 key ones. The first one is reach and performance, and really incrementality. On average, 86% of DSA traffic is incremental, and DSA generates incremental clicks with a positive or similar return on investment, and it performs exceptionally well with auto bidding. So this is the case for most of our new products. We always say that everything works better together, and automation specifically works better together. So whenever you're trying out these new solutions, I'd highly suggest that you try it out with some sort of our full automated bidding. The second one is efficiency and time saving. Now this is now, you're not going to be able to read this in your AdWords account in numbers or anything, but it's still a valuable part of the business. It's how many man hours are we putting in to setting up the campaign, to optimizing the campaign, and so on. So with a DSA campaign, you don't need to pause or create ads based on the available inventory on your website, seasonality or demand. The web crawling technology manages everything that for you. The third one is coverage security. So DSA makes sure that you don't miss any relevant queries and ensure that your ads will be shown to any relevant search query that pops up. And the last one is transparency and control. So DSA offers full transparency on the search query report, control through bids and dynamic target levels, and exclusion for irrelevant traffic. So even though it's automation and it's sort of a black box, you still have loads of control levers that you can play around with to make sure that you use DSA for your specific challenges. All right. So let's walk through how we set up a proper DSA campaign and how we can, some tips and tricks on how we can optimize them. First, let's go through the setup. So the first thing you need to know about DSA is that you can actually adjust the DSA targeting options to have either more control or better reach. If you want DSA to cover a very specific section of your website, you can opt for a more restrictive targeting type. Whereas if you want the benefit from automation across a large section of your website, you can prioritize reach. I recommend you to start with the easiest options if you've never set any DSA campaign up. I recommend you to start with the landing pages from your standard ad groups, and I'll explain a bit later. But first, I'll walk you through the 5 targeting options, when to use them, when not to use them, and some best practices. All right. So you're already running, probably, if you're watching this session, you're probably already running loads of search campaigns for your website. And your search ads are already sending traffic to selected URLs. Now, DSA can target those specific same pages dynamically without the need to manage additional keywords for those pages. You can just choose this setup, and it will actually target the URLs that you're already targeting, so the ones that are most likely the most valuable for you. Landing pages from your standard ad groups is the easiest starting point for DSA. It will achieve safe and relevant traffic, but also won't narrow it down too much, like some of the other targeting options might. So if you're planning to start DSA after the specific session, and I recommend that you do, I recommend you to start with this option. See if the click will work here. Cool. The next one Yeah, some other targeting options. The next one is URL is or URL contains. And this specific option increases the control over specifically what pages are promoted through your DSA. Now, this is very limited because it's only targeting the specific URL that you have chosen. So we actually recommend this more as an optimization lever. If you have a specific URL that you want to exclude, for example, or you have a specific URL that is very different from your business model, such as services or something that is a bit outside of what you typically offer, you can use the specific DSA to target those pages. So this is good for advertisers who need more control for optimization purposes, and also if you have unindexed sites, so our crawling bots can't crawl your websites. So a downside of this is that it's very limited, and it's typically not maximizing the potential that DSA might bring to your overall marketing efforts. The next one is also a cool one. It's called page feeds, and it's actually the most flexible and customizable way you can run DSAs. You can set up a feed to customize your targeting, creative, and bidding at scale. An example for this could be, let's say you're running an electronic shop, and you want to build a campaign for digital cameras with a 4-star rating, because you know that these cameras drive more value for your business. You can then add a specific label in your feed called 4 stars, and then in Google Ads target custom labels and enter the specific label 4 stars as a custom label. You can then opt in to add a custom bid for the target on this specific label. So you have a lot of control over which specific sites, which specific products you want to label as what, and you can play around with the bids to get the most value. So this is really cool for advertisers, or if you have large websites, it's cool if you have the capability to set up and maintain a feed. It's also the downside of this specific setup is that the feed must be maintained, but it's a really, really cool setup. Mm-hmm. Next one, we have the categories. So the categories simplifies the process of choosing sets of pages to target, and it does this by using our SEO crawling bot to index and provide category suggestions based on the logic of your site structure. So if you crawl your website with our crawler bot and you see that your categories are really logically and cleanly separated, then categories is a really cool setup. So for example, if you go back to the electronics example, if you have an online electronics store and you have digital cameras, you have TVs, you have video recorders, you have mobile phones, and they're neatly categorized, then our system will automatically detect that, and then we will, based on those categories, then push ads dynamically. So this is really good if you have larger websites that is organized clearly by categories. And again, if the website is not crawlable, we cannot make any suggestions. So again, it's really important that we can crawl your website. All right, and the last one is the broadest one. It's the all web pages, and we target your entire website. And this is it's the one that provides the largest reach. It requires a bit of maintenance because there might be some irrelevant pages and you need some exclusions. So it could be, for example, that your FAQ page or your contact us now page. It's important to then look at the queries that we're driving towards your website and then exclude the ones that are not really driving any value. And you can do that through a report. I'm going to show you how in a bit. All right, so those are the 5 different options that we have. You go from really narrow, a lot of control, to broader with the less control. All right. Now, if you've ever used DSA in the past, you might remember that we only had a specific setup that was a DSA campaign. So you would have a standard campaign, include keywords, and then you have a separate campaign for DSA. And that's now changed. So now we've actually added a second option, and that is a dynamic ad group. Then you can set aside your standard ad groups, and this is really cool because it gives you some really good benefits. Some of them are like you can include it in your existing search budget allocations. So we will dynamically allocate budget between your standard ad groups and the dynamic ad group to make sure that we optimize for your specific business outcome. You can easily compare DSA and keyword performance within a campaign. You can benchmark them against each other. And then you can use drafts and experiment to understand DSA incrementality. So how do we recommend using it? Should we have a campaign, an ad group? How should we set it up with the different targeting options? There's actually a pretty standard setup that I would recommend for most advertisers to try it first. So first of all, I recommend you to set up what we call a catch-all DSA campaign. So this is a separate campaign you set up on the side of your regular campaigns, and it's kind of a net where you're trying to catch all of the keywords and all of the queries that are relevant to your specific business, but that your existing campaigns are not utilizing at the moment. So in this specific setup, I would recommend you to go slightly broad. Again, recommending to start with landing pages from standard ad groups, but you can also set up an all web pages or a categories. Because it's fairly broad, it's going to catch a lot of queries and it's going to drive some incremental clicks or conversions to your business. The other option is to set an ad group on the side of your standard ad groups within specific campaigns, where we can try to capture incremental queries for the specific product that you're trying to sell. And this is a really good way of again, back to the dynamic budget allocation. It's a good way of making sure that you're driving the absolute best performance for that specific product category. And actually, the setup that I prefer is to have a combination of both. So to make sure that you're maximizing the potential of dynamic search ads, I would recommend you to combine the two and have one DSA catch-all campaign on the side. And then for all of your product groups where it's relevant, I recommend you to add a dynamic ad group to also catch the queries within there, to be more specific, more narrow. All right. So after you've set everything up, you catch all, and within your specific product ad groups, you can start to optimize and monitor your DSA activity. So some of the optimization best practices is using negative keywords. So using the search term report to identify irrelevant queries and then add them as negative keywords. A bit the same as I was mentioning earlier. DSA is trying to crawl your page. If you're not setting any restrictions to it, it will just send traffic to all of the pages within your website. So monitoring which type of queries are sending which type of traffic, and then excluding them or adding them as negative keywords is really crucial. Otherwise, you'll just send some redundant traffic to your website that's not going to drive any extra value. Excluding irrelevant or low-performing websites is also really relevant. So using the DSA category report to identify sections of your website that's performing poorly and then add them as negative. So if you can see that there are certain products where DSA is sending a lot of traffic, but it's not converting, it might be that our system is defining it as being relevant, but you're maybe not in that specific part of the sales process, or could be a lot of different things, then just exclude those categories from your setup. And then another factor is really making sure that you reach a high website coverage, above 75%, to avoid the missing traffic. And the metric of keyword website coverage is the metric that it shows the percentage of pages of a dynamic ad target out of all of the index pages. So since one page can be targeted by multiple dynamic ad targets, the coverage may exceed 100%. That's why it's pretty important to get it above 75%. It should be doable for most of you if you have a properly set up website. There's actually a report where you can see this website coverage metric. And again, it shows the percentage of the pages of a dynamic ad target out of all the index pages, and make sure that they reach plus 75%. Bit of redundancy there. Apologies. Now, there is a search query report for dynamic search ads. The report will show you every query that has been every auto-generated headline, landing page chosen, and the landing page title from a website, and then the normal click cost metrics that you can see in your AdWords account. So here you can actually see what is the specific query that has triggered that specific click, and to what specific page have people landed, and how has that specific click then performed afterwards. So you can see the whole journey of how is DSA performing. And these insights really make it really easy to then break out specific DSA opportunities. So if you can see that you have a catch-all campaign and you're sending a lot of traffic to a specific product where you don't have a standard ad group, it might be relevant to then kind of pull that out and see if you can then split test and optimize that on the side. Now, that doesn't mean that you should use DSA solely as a keyword mining tool. It is valuable to look into these reports to see whether there is something really standing out that you might have missed. But having the DSA solely for keyword mining purposes is not recommended. It's really a really powerful tool, and having it always on, both on the catch-all and the ad group level, has really big benefits for most advertisers. And the last one I think here is if you have low impression share due to rank. So if you see that your DSA is not really getting any impressions, you can go into your AdWords account. You can actually do this across all types of campaigns. It's a cool little trick. And there are some custom columns where you can see search lost is due to rank and budget. Budget is if you're not allocating enough budget to the campaign to win enough auctions. And the second one is based on the rank. Are you actually losing impression share due to the rank of the specific ad? And if the lost impression share due to rank is above 50%, I'd recommend you to try to just increase your bid by 20% to see if you can get slightly more impression share out of your dynamic search ads.
All right, perfect. I think we've covered all the questions here. So thank you very much for asking these questions. Thank you, Christian, again, for hosting the session on Smart Creatives. Something we would like to say to you as well is remember that we have a next session coming up in 2 weeks' time on the 16th of April, which is going to be about Google Analytics Health. So please tune in for that one. If you have any follow-up questions based on today's session, please feel free to reach out to your Google contact, and we're happy to help you. And with that, have a nice rest of the week.
Have a nice week.